Heute zum Thema Lösungen für die AgriFuture. Wir haben nur eine Erde, wir müssen sie hegen und pflegen, weil wir selbst mitgedeihen möchten. Wenn wir das tun,
Solutions for AgriFuture, Diplom-Ingenieur Walter Meyer, ProGIS, Club of Austria. Introduction. We only have one Earth we must care for if we also wish to thrive. If we do this, we will all be celebrating the wonderful one life in prosperity and abundance, with the ability to spoil each other with presents. We didn't inherit the Earth from our parents, but borrowed it from our children. ProGIS' mission is to deliver precise, up-to-date information for landlords to allow for effective and sustainable administration. We as humans do not only have self-interest, but also the obligation to manage Mother Earth's resources carefully. We can already see the effects of over-fertilization, overly exploited toxic substances, the concentration of livestock and overfishing. If we allow ourselves to take a closer look and implement the logical conclusions, we can quickly end and even reverse these developments. It is our vision to provide for needs such as water, building materials and heat for 3 times as many humans as are living today. An easy task if tackled through cooperation. In order to bring this vision to fruition, we are looking for partners in all countries connected to landowners that wish to introduce them to the newest scientific research, data collection and analysis tools. We are certain this may stimulate growth, both in terms of financial profits as well as individual quality of life. This broadcast deals with the practical application of this grand vision, what solutions and tools already have been developed, what scientific institutes are already involved in, researching verifiable recommendations, as well as questions that have been asked so far. Today we will be talking about how to manage the Earth's resources effectively and also live in prosperity. This will be our subject today. Allow me to introduce Diplom-Ingenieur Walter Meyer. His central project is ProGIS, Geographical Information System, which is a software that allows for the analysis of satellite data, also in correspondence with land registry and other input modalities. It allows for the collection and acquisition of data in order to make it available and also make it possible to give out scientific recommendations. In accordance with this, on 13th of October, we had an announcement of the AgriFuture Days, where we also explained the issues in depth. Also on YouTube, there are different videos about AgriFuture Days, all presentations available in German synchronization, and also original in English language. This was also streamed live, therefore it was a very nice experience for YouTube and OkiTalk, as everyone was able to follow up live through the stream. Walter has been active within these areas for a long time. He studied forestry at the Vienna University for Agriculture, has been active in this area for a very long time through his colleagues and also through the software, established international contacts. Of course, this is really the relevant aspect about which we will be talking tonight. I would like to ask Walter, what would you like to tell us about yourself? Good evening. I would like to be talking about my history in terms of coming to these conclusions, as I had great luck within my life. My background is in forestry through my parents. Then I took up education in agriculture, also in terms of higher education, as we had an issue with the local Autobahn. So therefore then I studied forestry. The luck was that forestry in Austria was the only study which combined economy and ecology. The study was called Forestry and the Creation of Support Structures for Natural Rivers and Landslides. Why is that? If you make an error in forestry, then you end up with an ecological problem, potentially next winter, potentially with the next landslide or the next flood. The thought process for me was interesting, so as a professional civil engineer, I came in contact with the ecological question. 30 years ago, there was a book about air pollution and the dying out of the trees. The message was, if we do not handle this with care, then in 100 years we may be back at the position of apes, in quotations, back on the trees. Then furthermore, I was motivated, as I said, we need solutions. As expert for the evaluation of agricultural fields, I also came in contact with the world of information technology. And then I became interested in doing even more IT and eventually became chief agent for Apple, Steve Jobs. So for 10 years I was only in IT, but I never lost sight of what it's all about. Therefore, we were able quite early to solve issues with so-called quote-unquote opponents, meaning those that released harmful substances. We have been able to solve these situations. First, we were able to determine those who cause the damage, as that is the one who needs to pay, and also the one who was damaged. Now it is a global question. Back then it was a regional question. Then, after Apple, I was chief agent for Acer East Europe, and then I began developing ProGIS, the geoinformation system, this system. Today we are much more advanced. We have 40,000 systems installed globally in about 40 countries. But now we have new data, and the new challenge we are facing, due to a lack of information, we made some wrong decisions for the globe. However, today we have new abilities for analysis and new tools to interpret the pictures correctly. For example, if I have an X-ray, also I don't know what's happening, I need an expert to interpret it. However, then I'm able to determine what is the cause, and this is what we are able to do today. That is the reason why after an accident I also had, there was my process and conviction strengthened even further, so I started the AgriFuture days, as we need a different cooperation model. The AgriFuture days was the first test bed of whether this may function. And it was a quite positive experience. It is going to work. Technology, economy and ecology can be integrated under principles of sustainability. I cannot destroy something that I wish to allow my children to inherit. That's my CV so far, more or less. Thank you so much for your explanations. These AgriFuture days that we also transmitted means has much more reach potentially than only for landowners. What is the actual goal of the AgriFuture days? Would you like to say something about that? The goal for AgriFuture days is to understand that with tech only we cannot solve it. Also me alone as Mr. Meyer, I am not able to solve it, as I'm unable to count all trees. There are about 1 million living entities, trees, on this planet. Who is able to do this? Who professor knows this? No one. Therefore we need local expertise. We need cooperations in a completely different form. And this was the goal of the AgriFuture days. In order to be able, with the help of technology and common cooperation, to be able to achieve greater goals that can only be solved together. Nature knows no borders, as if there's damage being done and wind is blowing left or right, then the individual left or right has the issue. Therefore we have damages today originating somewhere. We do not even know where plastic bags are produced. In this way we cannot sustainably manage the ecology. And therefore, if one benefits, someone else has damage, this issue must be solved. Therefore, we need the correlations between cause and effect. This was the idea for AgriFuture Days, 35 individuals, the very best from 4 continents. And the result was that we will continue to cooperate. Now we have interesting opportunities. We need the integration of technology, politics, science, and we also need the willingness for cooperation. And maybe what we learned in the mountains, without cooperation, you cannot succeed. As you are not alone on the globe, sometimes you need cooperation. Thank you very much. These are very great goals, and I believe our audience also would like to live in peace and with purpose on this earth. Many feel helpless. They ask what to do. What could an audience member do? What would you like to motivate them for? How could they contribute to support this process? The key question is cooperation itself. Each and every one is a part of the whole. In nature, no tree, no plant, no animal stands alone. I always like to mention the wonderful example about the tsunamis, flood waves. If we cooperate, other types of communication can work which we do not understand yet. We slowly start to understand these new types of communication, but cooperation is something that if several individuals work together and think together, then first of all, it can be very positive. It can also be very dangerous. If everyone is running in the wrong direction, there is an issue. If it's the right direction, then it can also be a very good result. This is the key question. Cooperation itself with proper purpose and goal setting. Each and every one is an integral part of the whole. This is not only about having one top manager. This would not work. We are all involved. Now, if it is about the ecological question, everyone has self-responsibility for themselves. There is one thing that we forgot in the last decades, that there is responsibility. Everyone who does something cannot only say that there is a certain accounting, but I will not care about the consequences. Someone else will deal about this. No, we have a common responsibility. And now, with this type of information technology, this assessment is possible. It is possible to create more pressure to allow responsibility to emerge again, but this must come from individuals themselves. If they are not willing, it would not work. However, the chance is here. Each and every one is tasked with recognizing this for themselves. Anyone who would like to contact us, call us, is happy to get involved. We created a club for this in particular called the Club of Ossiach. There is also a few European Union projects involved. We would like to create an entire framework for education. This is also something we cannot do alone. We need 193 countries we have on this globe. They all must cooperate somehow. It also makes no sense if there is a debate about nuclear power. If no one has it and only one has it, still an issue would remain. Therefore, this cannot be a solution. There are certain issues we are facing we can only solve together. And this is also the framework for Club of Ossiach and also AgriFuture Days. This is the initiative. Each and every one, we cannot simply withdraw and pretend to be helpless, in quotations, not willing to take up responsibility. This is not something that would work. This is not how we solve the issues. We must be ready to take up responsibility. In order to do that, we must find the pressure point which makes something happen. Invite individuals, cooperate, create initiatives. This is one of the great questions for the future. Thank you very much. So each and every audience member may think about who may be interested in this topic and may be willing to have a conversation about these ideas. You mentioned technologies in a general sense. Would you maybe like to bring up a few examples about scientific institutions that are seeking answers that already may have interesting results in relation to your work? In reference to this, I would like to talk about specific research institutions. There are great ones in Austria and in Germany, but there is one thing we did in the last decades. Due to so much expertise and so much knowledge, experts become better, but their area of expertise becomes ever smaller. However, this issue we are facing is a global problem. If I look at it in a mathematical sense, in the end I know everything about nothing. This, for example, would not work. Therefore, what can be a solution? What we need is a new type of science. This is a new understanding, however, all type of old-style farmers actually understand this. Today it is called holistic or emergent thinking. Here I will bring up one or two examples to explain this idea of emergence. However, this includes many different ideas of academia. As the farmer initially was agriculturalist, also had cows, also was able to deal with livestock and game. He also had to be able to construct his own home and so on and so forth. He was an universalist. This is not existing in the same way today. It is something we lost through specialization. And what we forgot is that certain ideas are always connected. Nature has a very strong sense of community, as nothing works or happens on its own. Everything works through cooperation. If something happens, if there is a cause, there is an effect somewhere else. Therefore, today we know quite a lot, we have many experts. However, it is important to implement it much more cleanly and to be able to determine potential benefits and damages and the causes. We took it so far, so today within our circle we have a professor that does ecological accounting, as it makes no sense if there is a type of accounting, one has 7 million profit, the other one has 14 million of loss. This would be a total of a 7 million loss. But today, this is not looked at in a holistic manner. Until now, this had never been necessary, for there hadn't been so many people and nature was plentiful. However, now there are many more people, so we need other methods to deal with this. Of course, the experts are talking a lot and doing research, and also here we are talking. Therefore, how can we actually proceed, as it's already overdue? If we do not act now, it may also be too late. What is the solution? How can we solve this problem? The far-reaching consequences of this idea, which have emerged in recent days, many of you certainly know the Davos Consortium. Next week, 1,000 individuals will meet there, speaking about economy on the planet. This came up this year for the first time, as the head of this consortium is an 81-year-old. He had a fantastic idea, which had been maybe misused for marketing so far, but now it has been accepted. How to respond to the risk of climate change, how to support economy to develop into this direction, how can we prevent ecological damage and still do business, how can we control the whole issue. We need better information. Now we have the year 2020. In 12 years there will be another billion individuals. How can we deal with the situation? Also, there's geopolitics. There is one globe. Maybe there's 193 countries or 500 countries, whatever, it doesn't matter. If one farmer neighbor makes a mistake, the other one has an issue. Therefore, we strive not to make these types of mistakes for not disturbing our neighbors. This is the first time that this comes up at Davos. Of course, the industry is also involved, because we cannot exclude industry and go back up to the trees. We need industry. However, the economy must be built on nature's law, which are naturally given. Therefore, my suggestion to various ministries on the entire globe is not only to have experts, but we need a type of holistic understanding. Just as the farmers' common sense, I have statements by university professors that say we would not need common sense. However, I say we need it. This is today called emergence. This is a holistic type of thinking about this entire problem and solution. Each and every one is asked to contribute. No one can withdraw and say they are not responsible because they're only one individual. I don't consider this to be correct. Each and every one is important, so we can solve this problem together. If I understand this properly, then a solution comes with thinking along these lines, being honest, and stating one's thoughts honestly. That's completely true. Only listening itself is not important, as some may think they rather just take another holiday. However, I cannot talk about not producing plastic waste in the morning and then in the evening I take a holiday and a flight, but only for 3 hours. So this would be disjointed. Our thought processes are not holistically integrated. We are right now performing actions that are not good for the whole. The second thing I would like to mention about this is that we need to think further about the idea that there is only one state that has the factor of general well-being, which is one of the smallest states, called Bhutan, who is also located in the mountains, which has this wellness, well-being indication. For it is the question, are you happy starting from a certain amount of money that you have? What is it about? We need to completely rethink the model by simply doing something for the future that is sustainable. Otherwise, we'll be gone. This is also a requirement. This is not only speaking about nice ideas. If we wish to sustainably manage the ecology, it is necessary. What I also consider relevant is, of course, the brain. Last time we had a few music tracks, for example, combining jazz musician and classical musician. They played together and there was a completely new type of music never heard before. However, the sharing and communion of two brains can, as a totality, be more, no matter what color their skin. Also, this is a question of cooperation. There is an immense potential for new conception, new ideas, if one is not working by himself, but together we can achieve more. We don't know at this point. If someone had installed a solar-powered cell for Caesar Nero, story may have been different. No one knew how a solar cell is working. Today, we understand the technology. This means today we have the possibility to create new opportunities. However, this must be in balance with the ecology. We can do whatever we like. Maybe there was a time when someone could pollute everything and just move to an island, but today we don't even know if that island may still be over water in 10 years. Another example, today we speak about the potential for rising sea levels, 5 meters, 10 meters or 7 meters, depending whom you ask and what time frame you are talking about. In Bangladesh, the highest elevation is only 0.5 meters, however there's 116 million people living there. If something happens, from one side there'll be the water, on the other side there's the Himalaya mountains. If something else happens, maybe the ice is melting. Therefore, we can't just tell them to grab some swimming gear. And also, they could not just easily evacuate. This is not a solution. Therefore, it is relevant to recognize these threat potentials, and we have to understand that if it is difficult, it's always only possible through cooperation. It has always been that way on this planet. Maybe for the second part, we would like to talk more about the AgriFuture days. Maybe there are certain presenters that you would like to talk about and would like to comment on them, Walter. Kindly, I like talking about it. As I mentioned, for this very first AgriFuture days, my idea was to invite everyone that is globally recognized to see we have a common issue that we can only solve through cooperation. There have been some fantastic speakers, and I would like to talk about a few, not to make a value judgment as everyone was really stellar. However, one issue I was also always really interested in was presented by Professor Hörmann by the Vienna University for Economics. He was talking about ecological accounting. He spoke about it in this way that he is an accounting professor at the university. I was the expert for the evaluation of ecology. There is an obvious connection. Professor Hermann had very nice examples as to why ecological balancing and accounting is a must, for I cannot just say one has a profit and the other has a loss. This does not work through accounting. That would only be a partial accounting. What we are doing today is that the GDP only is a partial accounting. If we talk about turnover and profit, we still do not have the whole picture. This is where we need to get to, and this was one key topic for me, and maybe about this, and so that the audience understands it. How does this process originate? Why to do ecological accounting? Again, if I cause damage to a tree, the very same thing goes for any type of plants in agriculture. Then this tree, this is what I've done 30 years ago, for example, has less leaves, therefore it is growing less, therefore it is producing less wood, and that would be the damage. However, this is only the economical damage. There is also another side, the ecological damage. Ecological damage consists of two parts, for this is an entire element out of several partial elements. If I have more leaves or needles on a tree, everyone can test this out. If you're below a tree, more water remains in the crown and between the leaves and the needles. 30–45% remain up there and never come down. However, if through, for example, harmful emissions, toxic air, less leaves or needles may be generated. Therefore, these toxic substances weren't good for the growth of the tree. There are less needles, less leaves, therefore there's more water on the ground. Now the ecological accounting starts. There's two effects. I have more water below, so potentially I'm getting flooding. If there's flooding, the construction engineer and the bank may be happy, the insurance may be happy. For them, it's a great business. Therefore, there is someone who derives benefit from ecological damage. Now, there's another aspect to ecological accounting. If there's more water on the ground, there is less water on the trees, on the needles. What happens? It evaporates into the air. Therefore, then, there may be less humidity within the air. Interesting idea. Therefore, there is less humidity in the air, and ask the butterflies, ask the bees, ask if there is less of these insects, ask the bird whether they will be happy. less birds. If there's less birds, there is less fertilization through seeds, therefore further ecological damage that no one has calculated so far. In my view, that's wrong. These are all elements that would be part of the ecological accounting. Same for agriculture. I need a holistic system and do not only solve the simple calculation about benefits, but also calculate damages. And if I do not account for them within my financing and within my accounting, then maybe for 1 or 2 generations there may be a benefit. However, then it is not sustainable and not working anymore. Therefore, it is important to integrate ecological accounting within the entire idea of accounting. So it really fit very well with Professor Hörmann's ideas about financial accounting. Our common knowledge, of course, creates an entirely different picture. For he has been an accountant, maybe was not also always popular. However, now with the added knowledge, we have another picture, adding the satellite imagery, for example. There are images existing about the past. Through these satellite images, I'm able to gain new information, for the picture itself is not containing the information. It is about the interpretation of the data contained within the image. Today we have global satellites with the ability to produce satellite images of 1 meter or higher resolution. Therefore, I am aware of any issue any day for all type of surfaces, and it can be analyzed. Damages can be evaluated. Benefits can be evaluated. Cost and investment can be evaluated. Therefore, now there is a technology that, if I understand the basis of nature, this technology can assist me to take a look at nature in a sustainable long-term fashion. Of course, in Russia, there are satellite pictures going back a long time. If I have 10-year-old pictures, I have even more information to make accurate predictions or evaluations. Now, in the last 2 years, we developed new mathematical models which are ready. 1 more year until implementation, but then it will be ready and we will be able to look into the past and through this be able to make heuristics for the future. And then Professor Hörmann brought the aspect that this may also be put into accounting. This, of course, is one example. In Austria, we have Johanneum Research, which for many years were researching about geoinformation system technology. There is one colleague at the head of these analytics. All of those things they can do today is really great and amazing. All of these examples, also I brought some examples that are equally interesting. This was the basis, the idea that if science thinks holistically, then a solution for the entire challenge can be presented. However, if any scientist is only focused on a very limited area and is not thinking holistically, then we have an issue. In regards to the data that we have, and also mention it today, there have been books about 1965, 1980s, great examples back then about issues, but they have not truly been circulated. People didn't want to hear about it. However, through presentations, also through the scientific and academic area, here we could show at AgriFuture Days the relevance of these ideas, which is truly interesting. Again, that through cooperation, once again, cooperation must be the goal. One alone may be thinking about it, but is not able to implement solutions, maybe thinking for 50 years without results. We must cooperate. That was the goal for AgriFuture Days. We had some truly great presentations that showed what a team could actually achieve. Very beautiful. It is about cooperation, no question about this, very well put. There we may have a lot more progress. In terms of evaluation processes and strategy, Professor Hörmann was speaking of. talking about evaluation of products and services. How is this project progressing? When will we be able to see this in practice? Tomorrow it could be implemented if we want. Once again, there was a woman from Netherlands who had worked for different agricultural businesses, and she's a lawyer. And now maybe we're at a turning point, potentially. The legal question always is it able to verify a damage that has been done? This is one of the challenges we are facing today. 30 years ago, within my example, I was able to do it, but not everybody was happy about it. Then it becomes a political question. Of course, if the emittent, the one who is creating the damage, is the same state, because he owns the power plant, which at the same time is in charge of the administration and at the same time is in charge of the justice system, then of course it gets somewhat difficult. For then all of these ideas are only centered within one structure. Maybe we know this in terms of dictators, which within themselves we also learned oftentimes are not preferred, this idea of centralization of power. And this was the learning effect that politics has a great challenge, which is to be able to describe problems. However, I'm also aware within politics there are many politicians that eventually say simply this is all very, very complicated, even though they are not even able to differentiate between complex and complicated. Still, they are in key positions. Why did he become a politician? Why did we not choose the very best to go into politics? That is one of the main questions for our future. What we need is a very good type of politics to be able to properly deal with the challenges we are facing since 50 years or aware of them since 100 years. I can also go into this. Truly, politics is a key question. Again, it is a matter of commonality and cooperation. There is also a threat. What we recognize is that many individuals are not interested in politics anymore. Established parties are losing popularity. There is also a threat to be found here. The next one that's coming up, will it really be better? I do not wish to speak against democracy. However, it is important to truly grasp the democratic core principles and propagate them. This is a key question for politics. It must also be integrated into this entire idea of finding a solution. Cooperation, which since a few years truly is at the center also of your work. However, you're already speaking for decades with politicians, with the European Union and many other organizations. What can you tell us about the progress? Did the AgriFuture days bring some new developments? The European Union gives 50% of its subsidies for agriculture. So that must be really important for them. We really have to be careful. Of course, everything that is influenced by politics always also is a question of power dynamics. In the past, the greatest power, it seems, was the idea of financing in the financial world. However, this means the one who had the most money was the one that succeeded, as ecology and economy was never properly integrated. 1 billion in the bank against 2 billion of damages. I'd like to win a case in that idea. So there was a 17-year-old long process. So there was not truly a possibility to properly deal with this idea of having 1 billion of benefits against 2 billion of damages. Of course, through the ecological accounting, at the very least, we have the ability to verify it. However, at the very end, we also need the appropriate politics and the appropriate justice system that is able to recognize these challenges and damages, as it was also always politics and economics were always convinced that 1 billion in the bank is positive, as potential damages or forest natural resources had not been properly accounted for. This was my approach as I was involved with this evaluation question, and truly learned back then. I analyzed this area, but it took me months. This cannot be done globally. I would need to replicate myself 100,000 times. However, for this now we have a technological solution to show these challenges, and in parallel what we need is a type of politics that is also involved in these thought processes, and a justice system that is also involved in implementing these ideas. The justice system also had been very strong and very strongly influenced by financial capital as well. What we have today, this analysis that I did in the recent years as to why I won, all those that were involved within this process, within the justice system at that time, they were all either themselves within the World War or had been there just after. So they were involved in the catastrophe of a world war, which sparked a thought process and helped them realize that this is not right. However, today it seems that a prestigious car may be more important than actually looking at the ecological balance. So today in politics, justice and administration, we have this prime issue we must face. However, this can only be done through politics. Administration is only there for organization, but the politicians are responsible for the rules. However, if I always only use second-class individuals for politics and the best ones for business, there is a disbalance and this becomes a critical issue. Therefore, we must be very precise in having a proper type of politics that is able to analyze issues and really implement solutions. However, what is happening this year in Davos in 1 week is truly interesting. For business is recognizing we have an issue on this globe. For if the globe in a sense is broken, even we can't do business anymore, so even we have to think in a sustainable fashion. That is why I mentioned, why did we have in Austria as one of the first countries a forestry law? Very simple reason. We had been one of the very first that found iron ore within the mountains. In order to smelt it, we needed lots of wood, and therefore we're simply removing the forest around the mountain. Within only a few years, there was no more forest. The protection given by the forest was not available anymore, which resulted in landslides. Here, truly, politics is at the helm in order to develop a forestry law. Which happened, there was an issue, and this issue had to be faced. The very same thing could be happening today. The challenge we are facing today, to refer to this again, I've been in Siberia for a few years and learned to implement big projects. We had a big project for a hospital. We had an issue in regards to permafrost, which showed us we did not need a foundation. We had been looking at the buildings and realized that they started toppling with permafrost. So we started creating proper foundations. For today they have great issues in regards to permafrost. Even here in Carinthia there had been a great catastrophe, as we also have permafrost at 500 meters and 1000 meters. There is less snow, but I spoke with a colleague within a skiing resort area. There it goes up to over 3000 meters. That becomes critical because if permafrost is dissolving, it is possible that this creates landslides. This happens in a few regions. I'm not mentioning them now on purpose. However, there have been huge landslides also because the permafrost in high elevation regions is dissolving at 3,000 or 5,000 meters. They are simply drilling in 2 meters, there's ice. Of course, if it gets warmer, then almost the entire mountain basically is melting and potentially flooding or creating landslides. So we don't really properly understand the consequences yet, so we have to think about how to prevent these issues. This is a question of risk management, which is also the beautiful idea about the AgriFuture days, to show this holistic approach and the cooperation between individuals, to show that there is an issue that one alone cannot solve. Not a single citizen, not a single scientist, but everyone must have interest in solving it, otherwise this challenge cannot be faced. It appears that the will exists also politically, but how can we proceed? How can we truly involve the very best people in these decision-making processes? How can we involve wise individuals that make decisions and do not put their own pocket first? Then, speaking of international cooperations, we can see it within the European Union. There are great discussions for months, but it's really hard to come to a decision. What do we need to truly progress? What we need is to truly be able to describe the issues. Now, speaking of the European Union, without speaking about it negatively, we here have a subsidy system for agriculture, which primarily takes care of how much space you actually have. If you have more, you get more money, less, you get less. There's also beginning to be ecological goals. However, this is not truly corresponding with the justice processes yet. This may still be improved. The second aspect is to see how farmers actually gain money. This is basically through the volume of they sell. So if they fertilize or over-fertilize, they get more profit. Whether this is truly sustainable, the fertilizer or the pesticides, what happens if we use this for 20 years, if maybe all the important elements or animals are gone? These are important questions that politics must recognize, and we must also be able to present it in a way that politics is able to implement this. Now, in the last years, there have been a few interesting developments, that we have new technologies which cannot be analyzed by individuals. Now, without naming any names, I had very interesting conversations as Apple chief agent. Back then we were attempting to introduce the Apple writer, but it seems that secretaries back then had been preferred to the implementation of computers. Therefore, computers had been created in America, but never in Austria. 6 months after this particular event, Apple had a 7-fold capacity from before, with the same price. Steve Jobs had a great idea, but we found a Japanese supplier, had a 7-fold increase. However, then the commercial chambers came up, asked about registrations, authorizations and so on. They actually created administrative hurdles, clearly, because if I am thinking in terms of competition, I want these administrative hurdles. That's part of the game. However, if it is not able to prove these ideas and also put it into a legal form, it cannot be touched. That is an issue. Therefore, we are in a much more complicated world today. However, we have educated individuals that are not truly able to evaluate these challenges. No matter whether they're to be found in politics or the justice system. Therefore, also, many are simply saying it has become very complicated. However, only this statement itself is not solving any problems. And also, I'm not a pessimist. Now there's going to be Davos. If I put together the 3,000 top scientists and I look at the 6 topics of Davos, they're all about ecology and economy. This is also important for industry. However, I cannot produce something indefinitely if I destroy the planet. There will be nothing else to produce. We are truly in an integrated, holistic system, which is a combination of ecology and economy. This is a complete system. It must be understood that one should not damage or destroy the other. Otherwise, it's not sustainable, and that is our goal. And this is part of my excitement to hear that this will be discussed for a few days at Davos with 3,000 people. Therefore, we will be able to have another type of perspective if this is being so widely discussed. For I already mentioned this issue exists 30 years ago. Many others mentioned it 25 years ago. One book I mentioned is from 1965 that also mentioned the issues and actually was forbidden back then. However, today we have the information available that shows us that due to the lack of information, we took some wrong decisions. Now, if I have improved information, it is possible to implement new solutions. However, it is important to find the individuals that are interested in implementing it as well. Much help is required. Each and every citizen, no matter how they heat their home, is asked to be responsible. Energy certainly is a key question, which is I would like to talk about now. However, the question is what truly is forestry and agriculture understood properly? It creates food for 7.3 billion people 3 times a day. It produces the entirety of the oxygen we require to breathe. It also produces water, which is a key question that is also attempted to being turned into a business by some. However, agriculture also produces great environment, potential great possibilities for recreation, the possibility to save many doctors taking a walk. So therefore, in the totality, we can see the ecology can give us great benefits in many different areas. Also, this can be understood, politicians can be motivated with better information about these ideas. Of course, within politics we always had the issue everyone thought they were right, and no pharaoh and no Caesar stepped back voluntarily. Our Caesars or kings at some point had been gone, whatever, all of them did something that eventually they were not welcome anymore. Same with communists. Now we have democracy. Will this remain? Now, looking at all the deaths caused by fascism, communism, Nazism, and still we have many deaths since we have democracy. Maybe a 30% quote-unquote improvement in terms of deaths. This cannot be the point, or maybe it's simply a question of time. This is not how we can succeed on this earth. We need entirely different models, how we can sustainably steward the planet. Now this, I would like to speak to all lawyers, for these laws have not been written by humans. We spoke a lot about AgriFuture days just now, and about the possibilities for progress in terms of politics. In terms of the grand strategy, it has not truly yet arrived with each and every one. However, now you mentioned Davos and that you would like to contribute there, also through the chief agent that is organizing this event. Now I would like to ask the question, what are your other plans for the next days, months? What are your most concrete plans to implement these solutions, to reach good dialogue for a more sustainable living? In the last 2 days, I sent some new business models to new colleagues, each of them also working with colleagues in the financial fields responsible for different areas, for we must create something that is globally scalable and sustainable. And for this we also need new types of business models. There is no use in saying there is a well-qualified individual somewhere that wishes to reign the world in terms of the ecological question. This cannot work and will not work. Therefore, I created a new business model to which I'm getting very positive feedback, where my proposition is that everything must come together. The experts must be involved. Many others must be an integrated part of this process. And also, of course, in terms of marketing technology through OkiTalk, to further propagate the message. It is important to communicate with many. The key question is how many individuals can we reach and ask and involve in finding the solution. So step one is to spread the information and then invite everyone to participate. There are many different ways of collaboration that are possible. And for this process, the communication itself, where all of you are listening, of course, also is a key question. It must be possible, and it is possible, that in the short term, through OkiTalk and through other solutions, we will have possibilities that had not been there before. The ability to have radio and television in a participatory fashion worldwide, where everyone can contribute. If I am potentially in an area which is my expertise, I may be able to contribute something that is relevant for everyone else. That is one of the key questions. Therefore, communication is truly important. Therefore, we need the will, the motivation, but we also have already the communication to be able to communicate lightning fast with everyone on the planet. However, it is important that the will is aligned with sustainable goals as well. The common collaboration certainly is central. As I understand, you already had a few ideas for OkiTalk and for spreading the message. Would you like to speak about this? Certainly, we can talk about this. Within the next 2 days, we have a few discussions and conversations. One of them, a high-ranking organizer for one project we initiated. So, along AgriFuture days, we were also interested with local colleagues to speak about the question of education and the question of culture and arts. Why did we do that? Usually, culture and art individuals are quite receptive, talking about nature, talking about environment. These are usually free thinkers. And it is certain we cannot solve this issue without education and without arts and culture. Of course, education must be accessible appropriately to each and every one. There may be different models for different ages, for different types of expertise and education levels. So we were talking about the integration of culture and art and education. This is another key question. I believe this is possible, and this is also one of our goals, to integrate culture, arts and education. And here we have a project we start thinking about with very big organizations I do not wish to mention yet, to do a big concert that would be held around the globe. Now it is possible with arts and culture, a reggae festival, maybe other ideas, other types of music as well. Through arts and culture, it is possible to promote the next version of AgriFuture Days and integrate these ideas. This could be truly exciting. For here, I would not only gain experts, but also the general population. Everyone is invited to participate and required. If everyone can be involved, this can happen through the sharing of information. However, the threat also is that through wrong information, individuals can be led down a wrong path, which it's said may have happened in the past. Therefore, we must be very careful to deliver the right type of information and to reach a wide audience. A festival for arts and culture, for example, in Carinthia or other counties, may be interesting. This is one possibility. In order to perform communication through arts and culture with the general population. Of course, we need the experts, we need politicians, we need the scientists and the administration, not a question about that. However, we also need the so-called masses. And the general population can certainly bring about change much faster than one singular expert. However, we need also all of those to properly draw out and implement it. As problems are becoming quite complex, it is important to see that we find a shared and common solution where everyone is participating. If today we recognize there is an ecological problem, then we also invite economic professors and all other areas of expertise, then we're on the right path. Thank you very much. I'm already curious to see the festival. Would you like to play an according track, or would you like to mention something else? We hope that in the beginning of February we will know for certain. And the model, if it won't happen this time, it will happen next time. The entire idea of the model of integration, arts, culture, education, technology, administration is a key question. Also economy. I do not wish to leave anyone out. Everyone has to know what each and every one can contribute, both positively and negatively. If we're not aware of that, then we have no overview. This cannot be the goal. Of course, this can become very interesting. I'm quite surprised in terms of all the things that already exist. So here, of course, the ecological subjects could be communicated quite well. Now we have a few more points about strategy. However, I would like to invite the listeners, also through telephone. Austrian telephone number 004372518197. This is the live number to call into shows if you would like to participate and share your mind. In the meantime, dear Walter, how would it be in 2 or 3 years if everything happened the way you would like it? I would like to mention one of the key questions, as I'm a tiny bit above 25, otherwise I wouldn't have the experience. This, of course, gave me a great learning effect, is the idea to involve youth. What we see globally now is that we have a very interesting development in the last years, that the age and youth both recognize something is wrong. Older people may ask what have they done wrong. However, they are not dependent anymore on responsibility and a job, so they are able to tell the truth. I am recognizing that in the circle what we have is we have elderly and we have the youth. The middle-aged one may have an issue due to job, responsibility, loans, mortgages. Therefore, what we need is projects that can be implemented quickly. Also, European Union projects, just to show that this is possible. Through technology, we can show that we can organize information management in nature much more effectively. However, what we also need is the elderly. And we had a time when there were no home for the elderlies. We had only a home where the elderly took care of the youth, and both were satisfied. Also, very interesting concept. And now we are separating them out, sending the youth away into kindergarten, elderly into elderly homes. This is really the smart way to do it. However, now we are again at an interesting point. For the elderly say that this is a mention and they look for a solution. The youth also says that they do not want to support the situation for 70 more years. Therefore, we should focus on have presentable projects. We need cooperations globally. And also we need those that already have the expertise and also youth that is ready and motivated to participate. I'm convinced this will be possible, and we also need those that are presently existing and wield great power. Potentially, they just acted out of ignorance. However, if we want to be smarter now, we have to change our strategy. So once again, it is about cooperation of all areas. Otherwise, it is not possible, but it is possible if we understand it. And also, we have to be willing. And in order to do that, we have to be able to spread information quickly. Does someone have a comment? Welcome to dear listeners. Dear Mark, your microphone. My main takeaway was 7 billion meals 3 times a day. Truly, the farmers are not properly recognized. I'd make a blog article about this. Certainly, there should be much more cooperation with consumers. Today, technology is ready to do that. One small example. Here in my computer, I have a map, and I can see which farmer is delivering what. I can do the transaction, and 2 hours later, the food could be there. Is it important to take a 3-ton SUV to just bring home a few kilograms? We never had such a bad conversion and relationship. With modern technology, we can do much more. However, we need to evaluate it properly and cleanly. Today, this is not possible yet, but in the future, it will be. German, you would like to mention your comment. Grüß euch. I think it is great that within the heads of those leading industry, finally the ecological aspect shall be integrated, so they will recognize proper relationships outside of their very simple calculations that were only looking at profit and disregarding everything else. So I think this is really great. I also think it is truly nice of you to say that they simply acted out of ignorance. I would propose that truly they consciously chose not to look at this idea and not to listen to the criticism because they simply didn't care and only cared for profit. However, I think it is great this is changing right now. Also, talking about regional farmers and the idea of directly buying from them, this is a great idea. Quite happy about it. It has to be much more decentralized than all the logistics that we have today. Truly, this is an unending story if we think about it. Therefore, I think it is great that you will be talking to Davos with individuals that may be more able to make decisions or have influence. I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you for this hint. This is really a great key question as well. Also, what turned out is that the consumers, together with the farmers, may cooperate much more. Both were losing so far, as one was paying too much and the other one couldn't sustain his farm. This cannot be sustainable. Of course, if you simply amassed a few farms and then had much more land, again, 72% of profit for agricultural products belongs to the large landowners only. Here, of course, I would like to mention the video of Markus Rüegg, which I added to the AgriFuture Day playlist, which shows how he implements an idea called vegetable subscriptions, where he basically rented a garage and everyone can enter through a code, and those that have the subscription, they're paying for the entire year in advance. The farmer immediately has his money, so this is really a great concept for financing. High recommendation to take a look at this project and maybe make one's own type of subscription service. I would like to give another answer in these terms, it shows once again how cooperation with local partners is important. It is also important to see that what I'm buying actually has the highest quality and is ecologically sound. Do I know this today? If I send someone 5,000 euros, I get a certificate, but that cannot be the point itself. It must be verified, which can also happen through technology. That's interesting, and thank you for the suggestion. Now, Alexander, your microphone. Yes, once again, hello to everyone listening. Now, we spoke a lot about the topic of technology, and when I heard this word for the first time tonight, I immediately thought about patents. And everyone knows that patents often have been sold under duress globally, and here I would like to know about the topic of patents, for it is also known that there are many patents, many technologies that are not released on purpose, that may actually benefit humanity or increase longevity, in any case would support humanity, which is also why they were sold under duress. How should this be dealt with in the future? And second part, within this context, are patents even useful and purposeful in the future? Would it even be smart to keep issuing patents? And how may it be achieved to potentially release the patents that are being held up somewhere, so that also this technology may be provided to humanity and may be developed further? For this would of course also support general sustainability. I'd love your opinion on that. Yes, maybe I may have some quite interesting answers, and thank you for this topic, which shows again that a group truly creates great ideas. I would just like to mention about patents. 1947 in New York, a solar cell was presented that said 75% of energy can be saved for New York, and that topic was gone. Nothing ever heard again about a solar cell. I'd just like to mention the solar input at the Earth's surface on the ground is 5,000 times as much as the entire energy requirement we have. Does someone know this? No. For now we're planning for electric cars, which then cannot be driven under the sun. I have water energy, solar industry, geothermals, all types of energy. We do not need patents. This would work through patents, for this is all decentralized, as the sun is shining everywhere. However, as a European, just as we did, we cannot try to build a huge power plant in Africa and then get our power for Europe. This is a risky situation. However, if we start a cooperation which can benefit both parties through cooperation, this can work. Again, this is the key question, and this was the business model. I truly thought a lot about it. The business model that we sent out tonight is talking about how to have proper financial partners, have the proper ideas, those that can contribute to the development, and we need 193 countries, for I would not want to exclude anyone, for there is no purpose if there's only one nuclear power plant in one country left, which creates damage for others. This would not be a sustainable solution, so we need to approach this, and the patent question is also key. Today, out of egoism, patents can be in the way, for patents are forbidding the use of something that would be beneficial for humanity. Therefore, again, the whole justice system is put to the task. Today, we have, of course, different information management. If we use these tools, all of these ideas can be registered. Someone can work with that type of data. Next generation may even track their eye movements, that even knows whether they were looking at tea or coffee, so they get personalized advertisement. Therefore, it shows that information actually is being abused, and that's not okay. And this is coming. However, if we can analyze the globe, better, now it becomes a legal question. We cannot create patents, even though profit may be acceptable, but patents that are important for humanity. This individual may earn enough money and get his crown, however, then it must benefit humanity. However, what is the idea of holding back patents? Because that is also actually losing value, causing damage. Same with a tree. A tree grows every year. Therefore, I can calculate how it would be grown in 20, 30, 40 years. Therefore, if there's damage today, I can do these calculations. With an evaluation and these information systems, I can trace it back and I can also prevent it and I can also put it into proper accounting. Therefore, if a patent is not being released, he can pay 10 billions basically as a payment for this can be accounted for. If we want it, and however, if we only say it is complicated, still I look at it from a point of view of common sense and was happy to be one of the fans of computers. For you don't have someone every day who's working with Steve Jobs. Then I switched over to the new boss, however then I immediately went over to Acer. Therefore I was lucky to be able to see and integrate many different regions. Then I even had an accident and this even further accelerated my process. Of course, we know by professors now that if you're under pressure, your brain capacity increases even more. Yes, Nicolette Zwart had a really nice perspective about this at the AgriFuture days. If we would give a legal personality to Earth, that it has the right to survive, then these ideas, as mentioned by Alexander about patents, would seem much more relevant and the Earth would be able to have its demands. She spoke about the initiatives in New Zealand, giving legal status to rivers. There's many other pilot projects in association with these ideas where already developments are taking place into this direction. Now, this is the key question within the legal framework. How can we achieve the status that the Earth is seen as a living entity with right to exist? Thank you for this hint. I spoke with her 5 times since AgriFuture days. One thing is very clear. What we must achieve is that the ones that are stewarding a part of this earth, this individual must have responsibility and must speak up. And the legal justice system must support them. Then it would be immediately solved. What I need to say is that if I own a piece of land or a house, then I have a responsibility. Therefore, if there is an issue, one simple example, we are flying with airplanes that are creating contrails. If I have more contrails, I have less solar input. Therefore, if there's clouds in front of my solar cells, it creates an inefficiency. That's not okay. Therefore, someone is infringing on the capacity and the demands I would have on my own land. So this would involve legal questions. Me, myself, for 30 years, I was evaluating also at court. So I understand how to prepare ideas that a lawyer or a judge also understands them. It must be put in very simple terms. Would someone else like to comment? Alexander, your microphone. Yes, I also took some notes. In terms of what Walter mentioned about solar energy, I built solar power plants for 2.5 years. In terms of my understanding, they are everything else but environmentally friendly, but this may be another topic. In terms of politics, Walter, you mentioned that politics must be involved. Also here, I have somewhat of a provocative thought about politics, for then one always has to talk about lobbyism as well. And at least here in Germany, I can speak about it. It is generally recognized that lobbyism in politics is quite widespread. If we follow up on that thought, then in my estimation, the question is, who is really writing the laws? Is it really the politicians? Or who is really responsible? And in correspondence with this question, I also had the thought, well, do we really need politicians? What can they do that the general public cannot do? There are so many intelligent individuals in the general public. What can politicians do that the general public cannot? And isn't it true that politics, fundamentally speaking, has too much power? We couldn't even say that, because if we think it through, then we see power lies elsewhere. However, everyone says politics has a lot of power. Isn't this a completely wrong assessment? Isn't it that much too much responsibility is located at politics, while actually those need to be involved that have good ideas? So the question for me is, do we really need politics? Thank you for the question. I really like it, for it is another key question. Today, of course, politics would be responsible to solve these issues, but we work differently. For now, instead of yearly accounting, we only have accounting per quarter, for it's even easier for the CEO if he leaves. The politician only has a 4-year time frame, may get a great job elsewhere and does not care. However, on the other side, on the other hand, we have those that are thinking about it. The power that politicians had through a one-man show, it was even more difficult. So democracy has its benefits. However, information that we have, understanding it, we have only expert politicians, we have no common sense politicians. I bring a simple example, I know I'm being provocative. 30 years ago, I won in regards to brown coal power plant. There was a lot of sulfur inside. Today we talk about CO2. Back then we had 30% CO2 and sour rain. Now we have 0.03% and now to 0.037%, and now we think that CO increase is a problem. No. Instead of building on distributed solutions for energy productions, we continue to focus on centralized solutions. First of all, it was coal in England, just as today still coal in Germany, too much sulfur. SO2 plus H2O is H2SO4, which is sulfuric acid. If you're in sulfuric acid for 24 hours, you would dissolve. Therefore, it's clear this is not good for nature neither. So politicians also could come up with different decision-making processes, but it makes no sense if someone who is only motivated through lobbyism or private interests, and also we already had defense ministers that had nothing to do with defense, even though they had no clue about their expertise. He may be a generalist or he may be just a lobbyist. And now the provocative example. Within the European Union there was an evaluation of damage in terms of coal power plants. This was in year 2002. Then it wasn't spoken about it anymore. Then they said 1,600 billion damage per year. Then they didn't mention it anymore. If I would be a company that is within this industry and is producing energy, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to start saving money for someone may claim damages. Therefore, also here, we can see we have more accounting questions. Again, thank you for your question. What are the accounting experts actually doing? We have the top 4 consulting that had 70 or 80% of the main important companies. 70% of their sales are from consulting, not accounting. Understanding that new laws are made with the proper ministry, however not written by the ministry. I myself was involved in such processes. So individuals prepared laws that were not created by the officials. They were already delivered, ready-made, because it has become more and more complicated. So it is possible that the law was not truly made for the public, but made for specific interests, special interests. Now this is the key question. How can we handle this situation? Now, speaking of politics, certainly we wish no dictator who believes he knows everything, for we already had this. I'm truly a supporter of democratic processes. However, what we need is responsibility, that those that make decisions must be able to also have a team and multifunctional individuals that are able to truly implement it. For now, it is either individuals don't know or they make wrong decisions. No decision is not good and a wrong decision isn't good either. Therefore, we need proper decision-making processes and also responsibility with politicians. Looks like we have a great chance with that festival, potentially collecting the proper topics beforehand, then evaluating it, and in consequence also create proper recommendations for politicians. There could be great potential as I think about it. Now, Mark, your microphone, you would like to say something? Yes. Seehofer says those that decide are not voted in, and those that are voted in have nothing to decide. Now the question is the result out of this. Can we escape the bureaucracy through a strategy of many flags? I'm aware of the statement of Seehofer. I have to congratulate them. However, what he did is he was disqualifying himself in the same manner, which means he was always at the top but never had anything to say. It means that someone else may have puppeteered him. Obviously, this is not the solution. The politician must, and also those that deal with the information, it is only possible through responsibility. We need responsibility. Once again, today in the morning, I had a long discussion about legal questions in terms of European Union and United States, which I already briefly mentioned. Today, through information management, I can bend this information in any shape I wish. Therefore, it is important to approach it in a completely new way. And this is a question of information and a question of responsibility as well as cooperation. These are the key areas in my view. Cooperation also means involving many individuals, many heads, for they together then, which we may also organize an association with Okitalk, also through the festival that we are speaking of. There may be the presentation of technology presented to experts who are honest, and we can make recommendations and truly give suggestions as to what we determined to be useful. Also, I have to mention that I won evaluations but then quit 30 years ago. Back then it was a local issue, today it is a global issue. What we didn't have back then is we didn't have information technology that could deliver the message. But today we have information technology where we need to take care, where we need the very best lawyers, the very best politicians to collaborate and find a solution to these challenges. and we certainly need responsibility. Thank you for the example of Seehofer. He's a good politician, but actually he disqualified himself with that statement. Thank you so much. Certainly it is cooperation. Once again, the aspect I like is the goal setting, to be happy, to put that into law, basically. The importance of happiness seems quite relevant to me, just as well as peace, which is a requirement to be happy. Germane, your contribution, your mic. We do not only need responsibility, but also the ability to charge individuals for if they only take responsibility without any consequence, then there must be the ability to truly implement this. And also, speaking of democracy, as everyone is always screaming for democracy, what kind of democracy do we have, aside from a dictatorial system of parties that decide without considering the population due to their individual correlations and special interests? This is truly the situation today, and here we need a change, for otherwise nothing would change. It is like Don Quixote fighting against windmills, not progressing, for eventually it yields the same result. As I see, there's a lot involved with this topic of agriculture, which I really enjoy, for it shows it is truly revolutionary, this way of thinking. However, this is the way to progress. I think that's a great thing. Thank you so much for the hint. I think that this is the case. I cannot say that the solution is simple. And also, I would like to mention that democracy in the last 50 years certainly has gone awry. After the recognitions of the two world wars, without going too much into politics. However, I would just like to mention that we had wrong information management and took wrong decisions. However, this was not only 100 years. Thinking about the Crusader Knights fighting Jerusalem, they were also simply expanding their business to Rome. Then later the main Protestant also involving himself. I am a Protestant myself. Just to say, also religion is not included from this topic. It is a difficult situation, however before it seemed more simple, for there was lots of space and few people. However, this was not sustainable on Earth, and we are not ready to evacuate for Mars. So we have changes within nature that are also existing. The nature is also changing without human input. And it doesn't even take that long, but that doesn't just take 10, 20 or 50 years. However, to give an example, also there was the trespassing of the Alps with elephants at some point. The Romans went up to Austria in shorts. Potentially the weather was much warmer back then. Therefore, we can see we're on a planet that is constantly changing, and we have the factor of time, which is critical today. This is my recommendation for the politicians and the administration as well. Factor time means we cannot now think about it for 200 years. Nature is not waiting for 200 years. In many areas it has been severely damaged. This is known since 40, 50 years to an astounding degree. The interesting aspect about forestry and agriculture, which is my area of expertise, even though I'm also familiar with other areas, again, it is about common sense. If I'm alone, then I must be able to be a jack of all trades and deal with any issues. However, now the issue is not to be solved anymore with only one common sense, but sharing many minds in common sense can allow us to find a solution more quickly. This is how it can work. That's almost perfect closing statements. We are already at the end of the show, so I would like to ask Walter whether you have a recommendation for someone, for a project, Would you like to announce certain activities, certain plans, any other statements that you have before we close this show? Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. I would like to thank you. And the questions were good and critical. This also shows me that in terms of perspective, I'm on the right path. So that these issues are global, can only be solved globally and only be solved together. This is our perspective and approach. So everyone is asked to share this information, spread this information. We have the opportunity through technology to do this quite quickly. And also we need new inputs, start new pilot projects that show we can solve something together that someone alone cannot do. That's truly exciting, and farmers have always been a great subject audience for this idea. And usually in areas where cooperation is required, because the environment is harsh, had been prime areas for more cooperation and these type of projects. And at the end, as a joke, what is the difference between men and women? So as men, in this million year, 999,000 years, we played war and learned to run, so we can run faster or run after our prey, and ran away, escaped the tiger. And the women were at home and learned to cooperate. Many children, the children were hungry, the men potentially came home with food, so on and so forth. This means, to a certain degree, we are marked by genetics, but also we have a head. And we should modulate some ideas of genetics and use our heads more. And then we can start pilot projects everywhere. Thank you so much. I would like to thank Klaus again for OkiTalk, which made this show possible. Thank you, Klaus. And I wish a good evening to all our listeners. Thank you.
Radio OkiTalk.